welcome to Omar's Rickshaw Ride. This is episode 3. Thank you for joining with us. Today, we are hyped to talk about Miss Marvel. We're really excited about the show that's coming up. Before we go there, let's give a shout out to our corporate sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by... Do we have a corporate sponsor? All these other podcasters got Liquid Death. You know what we need?
What?
We need our own water company. And the water company that should sponsor us is a fictional water company in Mohsin Hamid's How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia. Please go read that book if you haven't. It's a lot in there, but there is a fictional water bottle company, and I wish they would sponsor us.
Yeah. Or we can be sponsored by Lockjaw. I actually do love Lockjaw. Topo Chico is first, but Lockjaw is number 2.
Yes. For the record, none of them are sponsoring us.
No.
We are sponsoring us. And we hope you all do too. Come join us on Twitter at Omar's Rickshaw. And we have a link in our description there to hit us up on Discord, join our community, and hang out with us.
Yes, hang out with us.
So, what are we doing today? Today we're super stoked about Miss Marvel coming out June 8th.
Yes, Wednesday.
Right?
I'm taking the day off just to get ready. Just to get our TV room ready, make 3 flavors of popcorn.
Yeah, we first got into Miss Marvel. I think we got the comic books around 2014, 2015. Around that time, it was a big deal. Miss Marvel was a big deal.
Right. Obama times.
Yeah, it was a different world back in 2013, 2014. Thinking back, it seemed like DC and Marvel were being a little more conscious about bringing some real diversity, some real representation to their comic books. I imagine there was even like a Muslim who was one of the Green Lanterns. I remember reading that comic book. But yeah, so Miss Marvel for us really kind of opened a certain door when it came to the comic books.
Yeah. When it comes to Desi representation, India dominates.
Sure.
I mean, it's true.
Sure.
Yeah. And other South Asian countries, smaller ones or cultures, don't necessarily get the same type of, mainstream representation.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I think maybe some of this also has to do with Islamophobia. Back 2013, 2014, we were still at war in Iraq, I think, and Afghanistan, definitely. Yeah, it was a much different world, even though President Obama was, the face of the American empire, beautiful face. But still dropping bombs on little kids in Afghanistan.
And Pakistan. Mm-hmm. Let's not forget that.
There was still an era of Islamophobia back then. And whilst that is still present, the world has changed a lot in these last 8 or 9 years. Trump came, Trump kind of went, still hasn't completely gone. A pandemic came, still with us. The world is seemingly at war with each other in a way. I think what a lot of people brand as the culture wars. There's a divide between what people label as cancel culture versus what I like to think of as outrage culture. A lot of podcasters, a lot of comedians who basically just promote being mad at other people who they consider to be woke and what that might be or what that looks like. And so there becomes a resistance against shows like Miss Marvel. And we talked about this in our last podcast episode with the racism received by Moses Ingram because of her role in the Kenobi show.
Right.
So Here we are. Miss Marvel episode 1 is going to drop on Wednesday, June 8th. Going back into our history with reading the comic books, we've both read the series written by G. Willow Wilson.
Yeah.
And shout out to them. Shout out to Sana Amanat for creating Miss Marvel. I haven't read like the newer comic books.
No, I haven't either. We just have the 4 original ones, and I actually just finished reading them to our girl.
Yeah, we have a 5.5-year-old daughter who is also a big fan of Miss Marvel. I remember when she was a baby, I ordered a plush doll off of Etsy for her. That was one of her very first toys, was this plush Miss Marvel. Really cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She has quite a bit of Miss Marvel.
She has an action figure.
Yeah.
We have a poster up in her room.
Yeah.
She's been reading the comic books with you.
Right, and she's really hyped for the show as well. We're very selective on what she can watch, but this one we are going to let her watch it. I had to make some edits in the comics while I was reading. There are some things that she doesn't understand or I don't want to expose her to necessarily.
Yeah, we focused her nerdiness through shows like Kipo, Shira.
Carmen Sandiego.
We're watching Hilda right now on Netflix.
I love Hilda.
Yeah. Yeah, so this will be her first kind of live action, Marvel / Star Wars show that she's going to be watching with us. So it's a good step for her.
Yeah.
All right, so you've read these comics more recently. Any thoughts that have come up for you?
I think one thing that I have been wondering is how much the show will depart from the comics, because we know that it will be different. I have a fear that there is going to be no Terrigen exposure, that her origin of her powers or how her powers are triggered is going to be different. Just from what we have seen of the trailers or
right.
So I think that there's that, and that just makes me wonder what else is going to go and what else is going to be added, and whether that's going to add value or that's going to kind of like take away from how much I like the story. I mean, in the comic books, Wolverine shows up.
Old Man Logan.
Loki shows up. There is a part of a Shield comic where she is also present. Miss Marvel is also there. So Gemma Simmons and Phil Coulson are there. So my question is, how much will they preserve and how much will they change with her powers, with the characters, with how she is in the comics and how they make her out to be.
Are you worried? Are you excited?
I'm very excited. I am a little worried maybe.
The internet seemed apprehensive initially around change, which I guess that's how society is. For myself, I have faith in Sana Amanat, who was, part of this. And, I think there was an interview where, she was acknowledging that there's a bit of a change, but that it fits into the larger MCU.
If the creators of Miss Marvel have signed off on the changes, I would be okay with that. But I still wonder. The other thing that I've started to feel a little bit is that I don't have a Pakistani American experience, as a child growing up or as a teenager. My experience is very different. I'm a Pakistani immigrant. So there are some things that are very foreign to me almost. For example, her family's relationship with the mosque and her relationship or her having to go and see Hazrat Saab or whoever that Sheikh Abdullah is. These things are totally sort of like not what my experience is. So that's it. These are the type of things, or very authoritarian parents or these types of things. Like that's not my family.
No.
So I wonder how people will relate to it here and in places that are not here. So
well, there's so much, I guess, diversity within our own community. Like your lived experience versus my lived experience. I grew up here. My family's from Pakistan. I was born here in New York. Grew up in Long Beach in Southern California, and we grew up in one of the largest masjids in SoCal. It started off as a very small, tiny community that grew larger and larger and larger. And now, it's, I think, the largest masjid in Southern California. So, I did have very authoritarian parents and there's a very close-knit South Asian Muslim community. But even within that community, I'm sure there's a million different experiences, a million different lived experiences and how they experience other members of the community. And that may also vary along so many different factors, whether or not your family was of a certain income level, whether or not you were a boy or growing up as a girl, or, having different ways of expressing gender or different ways of expressing sexual orientation. So many different experiences.
Yeah.
What we'll see reflected in Miss Marvel, we're not sure. And we don't have to see every single one, at least in my opinion, be reflected. I would just want to see what these artists have created and their story that they're telling.
Yeah, and I do think that people will be able to relate to lots of different aspects of it, because she's not just Pakistani. Right? And she's not just Muslim. She's also a teenager growing up in a certain time in New Jersey. She's also a girl. She's also a nerd. So there's lots of layers there that people will be able to relate to, I'm sure. I'm just saying that for myself, I have found myself outside of some of these things that people get really excited about as a representation. And it's okay, but it also makes me wonder how it will be received in Pakistan.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see how that does happen. And we'll talk a little more about its release in Pakistan a little later.
Yeah.
Going back to, I guess, our own relationships with, I think I'm really excited to see, or at least to think about, like, I grew up here. She's a teenager. I was a teenager in the 90s. And now we're like 20 some years beyond that. It's a different generation growing up here. It's a different generation, a time to grow up in, to, to come of age in than the 80s and the 90s. Society is so much different.
Yeah. What do you specifically think is different?
As you mentioned earlier, the world has changed in so many different ways, even from 2013 to 2022. But if you go back to the 90s, there really wasn't, brown people on TV. There weren't as many of us out there doing what we're doing. The world was a little more spread apart without the internet, without all of this. Like the shows we mentioned that we focus our daughter to watch, or we try to watch with her. These are mostly shows with women of color that are leads, whether it's Carmen Sandiego, Shira, and how girls or boys and, people are portrayed. It's a very, in my day, we had Gilligan's Island. And that shit was racist as fudge. It was terrible.
I don't even know about Gilligan's Island. In Pakistan, we watched this show called Manimal, where a dude becomes an animal. That's his superpower. It's a white dude. And nobody has ever heard of it, except for one person in our family who hails from France, who also used to watch that when they were a kid. So, that there was a connection there. But other than that, yeah, I mean, in the TV that we watched, that was not Pakistani shows growing up in Pakistan, Not only there was no, diverse representation. When there was a representation, it was either caricatures,
right,
or, people being portrayed as terrorists or criminals, or yeah. And so, and even, I mean, I don't know how things will be when we go back to Pakistan, but, there's sort of like a racism that has stemmed from consuming Western media with these stereotypes or with the lack of representation, meaningful representation. Yeah.
For sure. Let's talk about the trailers. What'd you think?
I feel really excited.
Yeah.
I love how in the trailers we're seeing her imagination being expressed visually. Like she's wearing a crown, like I think she's a homecoming queen or something like that. She's imagining all this. She has this like fantasy world, and she talks about it too. And I'm really happy to see it being represented visually. I generally like these shows where someone's imagination is sort of coming alive. I haven't ever seen her in anything else, but I'm very excited to see Iman Vellani. She seems like such a good fit for the role.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. She's legit. She's such a nerd. I'm so happy that she's in this.
Right? And I think that connection is really important, particularly because Kamala is a nerd, and when she's exposed to the Terrigen Mist, she has all these weird, experiences, these psychedelic experiences. She writes fan fiction and all of this. So I think that's really cute that they actually found somebody who fits the role so well that they also have that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
The trailers have been really beautiful, vibrant. I'm so excited to see this in person, to see this, we've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, we've been waiting for a long time. There are some things in the trailer that I have questions about, particularly this clock ticking, which, I didn't quite know how to place. Maybe it's just a transition, but why? Why is this clock ticking a transition? So that was my question. What does that signify? Why did that get 3 to 4 seconds of the trailer? So that's a question I have. I'm very curious to meet the other characters. Amir, her brother, her parents, Bruno, to see, how they come to life against how they are in my imagination or, from the comics.
Right on. Yeah, I really liked some of the imagery from the trailers. I liked seeing the there was a memorial for Black Widow and Iron Man. I thought that was really cool. I liked her own nerdiness and her own wanting to embody Captain Marvel. So
Right.
cool. Like the
It's
fan
so
the
cool.
fangirl aspect of it, like,
Yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And it also reminds me that when our daughter was younger, in a moment of weakness, I allowed her to watch Captain Marvel because she would say that she wanted to be a pilot. Her nana, my dad is a pilot. He took her for a plane ride. So she started to say that she wanted to be a pilot. One of her uncles got her a Carol Danvers bobblehead. Bobblehead, get them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, she started to get into it. So I allowed her to watch Captain Marvel. She would play Captain Marvel and she would really kind of, want to be like Carol Danvers.
Yeah.
I think that that's really cute. It's almost like I can see my child in her. You know what I mean? But more now that she's growing up and I can see a little bit more of her nerdy interests and her personality. But I can kind of see that. I can kind of see a Marvel nerd coming out of this. So yeah, it's very endearing.
What did she say the other day? She's not into unicorns anymore.
Oh yeah. No more unicorns.
What is she into now?
Dragons. Yeah. And she's not into princesses, which is such a relief for me because I have been doing damage control on that end for the last 5.5 years. Yeah. So yeah, she's not into princesses. She's not into unicorns anymore.
So yeah, the trailers were great. Trailer reactions. I shared a trailer with a group of friends on Discord.
Okay.
And because I was so hyped about the show, so I shared it with them. And these are a bunch of like nerds I know from I guess Star Wars stuff. So, and the response was someone said, "I wonder who is this marketed for?" And that made it seem like it wasn't marketed for him. That was what the implication was.
Right.
I wonder if I had shared like the first Spider-Man trailer. Is that also the reaction people say? Like, who's this being promoted for?
No, it's
and
not.
Spider-Man, when you think about he was also in high school, right?
Yeah.
Kamala Khan's in high school.
Oh yeah, the response would have been different. If it was Peter Parker rather than Kamala Khan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so that was like my initial wow, I was trying to share excitement for this show, and the response from other nerds was, I don't think this is for us. And in my opinion, this show is for everybody, as much as, let's say, Spider-Man is for everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
And we listened to, in getting ready for this show, and in kind of conceptualizing our own podcast, we listened to some other podcast reactions to Miss Marvel. There's not a lot out there.
No, there aren't. Only the very big, the very serious Marvel nerds have reacted to the trailer.
We're pausing because our daughter is now.
The director is here.
All right. Anything else from what we saw in trailer reaction online?
I really like the bangle, the bracelet.
Sure.
And I love that it is being attributed to her grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
That this belonged to Nani. I love that. It's such an ancestral connection.
Is that in the comics at all or no?
No.
Okay.
No. There isn't much connection to ancestors other than the Kree.
One thing in my just random internet searching about the show was Miss Marvel News has a controversies page. And I think they came out with some of these controversies about maybe a year ago. Someone wrote a whole essay talking about issues that they had with casting, the casting of Indians to portray Pakistanis, not casting hijab-wearing actresses as hijab-wearing characters. I found that to be really interesting. On the one hand, I was just so excited that the show was coming out that I hadn't really considered some of these other issues. And I'm not even sure if at least for me personally, if these are issues. But I just want to point out that there were people who did have some of these issues. I'm not too sure where they are now with this stuff, but I do appreciate Miss Marvel News on Twitter, and I get a lot of my information from them.
Yeah. I would like to hear you say more before I say what I think about some of those things.
Mm-hmm. What you mean?
You said that they may not even be issues for you personally.
Like the idea of an Indian person being cast as a Pakistani, at least for me, no, that really...
Why?
Why? I think because in my head, it just feels like if I could go back in time, or if we could go back in time, like, would there even be a Pakistan if there wasn't a legacy of colonialism in South Asia, right? I mean, the partition was a very traumatic event that happened. My parents lived through the partition. They're pretty old. And they were kids at the time. I know that there's differences within South Asia. For instance, Punjab is not Balochistan. I'm Punjabi, and Punjab is also in India. Like, it's hard for me to be like, okay, beyond this side, this, human-made line, like, you're not the same as me, but we're both Punjabi. So that is in my head, like, why I don't have that same reservation.
I do understand what you're saying. I remember that when Harriet Tubman came out, I went to watch it. I was really excited about it. And some of my American Black friends were actually not happy with a British Black woman being cast as Harriet Tubman. So it's a similar kind of contention.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I don't think that there is so much of an issue if an Indian actress is cast as a Pakistani character. But the question is why? You couldn't find a Pakistani actor? Why? You know what I mean? It's not so much that they're Indian and we are Pakistani, so that Pakistanis should play Pakistanis. No, but, that's not a rule. But I want to ask why a Pakistani wasn't cast in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one thing. And then, I don't know what people have to say. I would like to hear from people who may be listening to our podcast also about what they think. Should only hijabis be cast as hijab-wearing characters? My answer would be no. But why can't you find a hijabi?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the same argument as a trans character could be played by a trans actor, but you're finding a cis actor to play a trans character. Why? That is the question that is interesting to me that I would like to have answered in these situations. Right? And then once we have these discussions or we ask these questions, then anybody can play anybody as far as I'm concerned. If it was a film about my life, would I be okay with an Indian actor playing my life? Sure. Because like you said, we are actually not that far removed from each other in reality.
Mm-hmm.
This is just imaginary differences that we have created. If we are looking at difference, then there are many differences even within the borders of Pakistan. There are Pashtuns, there are Punjabis, very different.
Mm-hmm.
If we started speaking our own languages, our indigenous languages, we wouldn't even be able to understand each other. So, yeah, I think that there is a question there, but should people be canceled for it? I say nay.
There's so much to look forward to in this show. Sweatshop Boys, their music is going to be in the show.
Yeah, isn't that awesome?
Right.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Sweatshop Boys is Riz, our favorite cargo pilot. Once again, shout out to Star Wars, Rogue One. And then also Himanshu from Das Racist. Love their music. Check them out. Excited they're going to be in the show. And next, we talked about the vibrancy of the show.
Yes.
And what has really popped are the posters and the artwork that Marvel has released to promote the show.
Yes, and it's done by Shazil Malik, who is a fellow Lahori.
Mm-hmm.
And we have loved Shazil's art for a long time, actually since the first Aurat March, Women's March in Pakistan. And when was it? Several years ago now, pre-pandemic. And Shazil did the art for that. And we really loved those posters, and we have been a fan ever since as a family. So we are really excited about Shazil's art being part of this show as well, mm-hmm. along with Sweatshop Boys. Shazil has such a fingerprint. You can look at their art from afar and tell that this is Shazil Malik art. And, it really does evoke vibrancy.
Mm-hmm.
Youth, I don't know, it's very specifically Pakistani. And I see these motifs from like the Bashahi Masjid. It's very quintessentially Lahori kind of vibrancy. So
mm-hmm.
it's awesome.
Yeah, shout out to Shazil. Thank you for making this beautiful artwork. Love it. Also, I love how they've been promoting the show in very unique ways. On Twitter, I saw a picture of a billboard on the New Jersey Turnpike.
Oh yeah, it's so cute.
And she's sitting on top of it. Miss Marvel is sitting on top of the billboard, and it echoes a scene from the comics, right?
She's not sitting on top of a billboard in the comics, but she does perch on street lights and on buildings.
Yeah, I love how they're
very
hyping.
reminiscent of it. Yeah.
I love how they're hyping up the show. As we start to wrap up, are there any characters you're looking forward to seeing in the show outside of Miss Marvel?
I'm really interested in meeting the parents. I'm curious to see how the parents are portrayed. Bruno and Nakia, and the love interest, Kamran, who is also Inhuman. I want to see what they have done with his powers and his part of the narrative.
I've heard about Red Dagger. I don't know if Kamran is who this Red Dagger person is or not. But yeah, looking forward to seeing how they develop these characters. I have my fingers crossed to see some folks. I'd love to see Monica Rambeau. Also, Jimmy Woo, the FBI agent. I always love when he shows up. Our daughter, we watched the cartoon. There was a cartoon with like Miss Marvel and like Squirrel Girl, America
and
Chavez.
Shuri and America Chavez, yeah.
It'd be awesome to see them in the show, especially with America Chavez showing up in Doctor Strange.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to see any of these characters or, somebody from S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm definitely personally more invested in seeing S.H.I.E.L.D. folks.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see one of the other Inhumans that we know from S.H.I.E.L.D. You had said something about Simu Liu and Daisy Johnson. What's her name?
Chloe Bennett
tweeting
at each other
mysteriously at each other.
And I think people read into that Daisy Johnson / Quake is going to show up in the MCU alongside Simu Liu, which would be awesome. But I'm not too sure.
Yeah, and we don't know if they will show up in Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
But it would be fun to see who does show up.
Lockjaw would be awesome.
Lockjaw would be awesome. I would say, though, that on a Marvel show budget, I would be fearful of what the CGI will be like for Lockjaw.
Right.
And speaking of CGI, we haven't really talked about her powers.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to see?
I would love to see our backyard chickens not fight each other as they're about to right now. That said, I don't know. I don't have like any expectations one way or another. I know they've changed the look of her powers, how they are portrayed, and maybe even the background and what exactly those powers are. I'm really just curious. I can't wait.
Me too. I mean, I have seen her embiggen in the trailers
mm-hmm.
and the previews that we have watched.
Yeah.
So we do know that she is still Bendy Girl to some level.
Mm-hmm. We haven't mentioned, I really love that Marvel is going to be releasing the show in Pakistan, even though I guess Disney Plus isn't there, but they're going to be releasing 2 episodes at a time in the movie theaters.
Yes, they're going to be releasing 2 episodes at a time as a feature 3 times in the movie theaters. It's kind of sad that Disney Plus is not in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
So that does warrant a cinematic release. I do also have to say that Marvel did really well with the last Spider-Man in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
It was released in very few theaters, not much more than 50 countrywide, and they did quite well. It makes sense that this is an untapped market that they can deliver to.
So the first release in Pakistan is June 16th.
Yes.
The first 2 episodes will be shown. That's awesome. I can't wait to hear how it's received.
Yeah, I'm going to see if my nieces are going to go watch it, and maybe we can ask them what they think.
For sure. Any apprehensions? We've been talking about how excited we are. Any apprehension, any fear?
Yes. Initially, my fear was that they would depart too far from the comic book. But also, I'm afraid of Pakistani culture being portrayed in too vibrant of a way, exoticizing. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm afraid of. I think representation is so important, but to make representation entertaining, mm-hmm. sometimes the vibrancy can be turned up.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a little afraid of that. What makes me feel better is that there's so many creatives who are Pakistani, who mm-hmm. are part of this, that creates sort of like a fail-safe when it comes to those things. But that's my basic fear.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any. I think my only fear is like the show sucks, but I doubt that's going to happen. How will it fit with all the other Marvel shows so far? We've enjoyed all of that we've seen, haven't we? We really liked Loki.
Yes. Oh, and he's another person who could potentially show up.
For sure. For sure.
Right?
For sure.
I would love to see that.
Hawkeye was okay. Hawkeye we liked.
It was okay. Yeah, we enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with Marvel shows for me is that it's not always easy to critique the quality of them because there is value for us in it beyond quality being Marvel nerds.
Right.
So we will see what the experience here is. I'm curious.
Well, we liked them all except for, is it the Captain, the Falcon and...
Winter Soldier and Falcon.
Yeah. I think that one we liked the least.
Yes, I mean, there were so many things in that, and we can talk about it in another episode.
For
but
sure.
yeah, I had totally forgotten that Loki might show up in this, and I would love to see that.
With the MCU pushing towards this whole multiverse stuff and, possibly like Secret Wars and, all this stuff, I'm curious where the show pushes the MCU in that direction.
Yes, absolutely. Particularly with Doctor Strange having recently come out and America Chavez being a multiverse traveler. We'll see how these kid characters fall into that. I'm curious.
Right. Well, we'll be back. We'll put out the show, our reaction to episode 1 as soon as we can.
As soon as we can. End of the week is realistic
probably by
for
Friday.
us. Yes.
Well, let's wrap up for today. We'll be back with our recap and reaction of episode 1.
Yes, by Friday.
In the meantime, thank you for listening. Please share our episode. We're excited to get feedback. Follow us on Twitter at Omar's Rickshaw. We're also on YouTube, Discord. Please share with everyone, and we'll see you all in a few days.
Next time.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.